Hey, and welcome back to the Relationship Schools podcast, where we teach you how to be a smart couple, a smart human being, a smart individual by educating yourself about relationships. Because relationships are the cornerstone of a well-lived life, in case you haven't heard about that Harvard study. There's nothing better than being able to, after a challenging day, like come home and to your home that feels safe and to be held by another person that's awesome, whether it's a close friend, a family member, or a partner. And some of you don't have that because you've had some pain there, or you don't know how, or your partner's a pain in the ass, or you're kind of a pain in the ass. Whatever the case is, we want to help you get better at connection. And connection with the closest people, as you'll be reminded of in this podcast episode, is very challenging. So that's what this podcast is designed to help you with. Your closest relationships will improve so that you can have that soft place to land at the end of the day, right? Okay, our deeper program, as you know, is sold out. So you can get on the wait list or sign up for January. And sorry we missed you this time. And I'm really psyched for all of you who are coming to Boulder in September to go really deep and to completely upgrade how you do relationships. Yes. So thanks for that. All right. My next guest here is an amazing human being and a friend, Tami Simon. She founded Sounds True. Sounds True is a multimedia publishing company here in Louisville, Colorado. And they are a big deal. If you've read any spiritual book at any point in your life, chances are Sounds True published it. Okay, they have incredible authors, everybody from Adyashanti to Pema Chodron, Alex Gray. Oh my gosh, I'm just scanning their list here. Brene Brown, Stan Tatkin, John Kabat-Zinn, Robert Pang, Coleman Barks, Dan Millman. I'm just in the D's, guys. Just Harriet Lerner. So lots of cool stuff. Peter Levine. Man, they've just published a lot of excellent books. So if you want a good spiritual book, just go to soundstrue.com, right? Yeah. So Tami and I go way back many years. She's going to tell a quick funny story that I didn't remember until she told it. And yeah, she is just a really beautiful person who goes deep inside of herself. She's a human being, so she admits all of her flaws and faults and just transparent. She's married to an awesome woman named Julie Kramer, who's a healer here in Boulder. They have a couple dogs. And yeah, what's so cool about Tami and why I wanted to interview her is she's very plugged into the personal growth and development spiritual scene globally, as well as here in Boulder, because it's kind of a big deal in Boulder. And I just wanted to mine her brain about relationships and spirituality. So that's what this podcast is about. And I think you're going to get a lot out of this. There's many lessons in here. And of course, we'll have an action step at the end for you and or a partner friend to do. So please listen for that and see if you can actually do it, okay? No fucking around here, guys. Actually do the action step. Okay, let's get on with it. Tami Simon. Let's do it. Welcome, Tami Simon.
Great to be with you, Jason.
Yeah, good to see you again, as always. Tami, we're going to dive into some spirituality and relationship stuff, but before we do, just give the listener a sense of who you are and what you're up to in the world.
Never a simple question, who you are, but I am the founder and publisher at Sounds True, and one of the new initiatives at Sounds True is the Sounds True Foundation, where we're trying to bring spiritual awakening and mindfulness and compassion to people who might not otherwise be introduced to those traditions and those skills and those approaches. And that's kind of what I'm up to at Sounds True. Our tagline is waking up the world. And that's a pretty big idea, but we're giving it everything we got.
Yeah, so awesome. And you guys have published an insane amount of spiritual books. Probably any spiritual book that's on the shelf is probably published by you, from Adyashanti to Bruce Tiff. So it's like psychology, Buddhism. Like you guys have a real force. You're a force in the kind of spiritual personal growth realm, seems like to me.
We are indeed a force. I think there are a lot of other good publishers out there as well. If I look at my own bookshelf, there's books from lots of publishers, just to be for a moment from waking up the world to a moment of humble contribution. So yeah, we're a force.
Yeah. Awesome. And Tami, how you and I met, I just want to kind of recollect this. I met you, I believe, at one of Reggie Ray's meditation retreats, probably 2005 or 6 would be my guess. I don't know if you remember. But
yeah, I do. What I remember the most vividly is being on the dance floor with you, Jason, and you and I doing some pretty serious body slamming, pretty serious,
That's true.
I threw myself against you, and I was like, wow, Jason can take it. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah. We danced rough.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a good memory. Totally. So yeah, I've sat many sitting sessions with you, which I just, when you're sitting 9 hours a day with someone, day after day, week after week, there's just a level of respect, the mutual respect of like, you might not know the person, but it's like just bowing to the person like, dude, you're doing this. Oh my God. Like we're like kin, right? So I remember a lot of those moments with you.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, it was a, Vajrayana meditation retreat, and, Vajrayana students, I think, have this view of themselves as the kind of hardcore practitioners. And so that's the area in which we bonded, these month-long retreats that we did.
Yeah.
Vajrayana trainings.
Yeah. Several of them. Just for the listeners, so they know what the hell Vajrayana is. Can you unpack that? Just give a layman's term of like, what does Vajrayana mean?
Sure. It's a method of working with energy and really deepening the somatic practice of meditation, where you're deeply connected with your own physical body and physical energy and the energy of the earth. And also in higher levels of the practice, working with visualizations and imagining yourself, your body from the inside out, being filled with a deity form. And it's known as the swift path because of the speed of transformation that's available through the methods.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it completely transformed my life. Studying with Reggie and being essentially handed a view on how to see life, completely changed my world. Yeah. Yeah,
and that's Reggie Ray, the meditation teacher that we both studied with as Vajrayana students.
Yeah. Yep. It also gave me, like, the other cool thing about meditation is it gave me the ability to be with my experience, which up to that point, I had a pretty hard time, just being with strong emotion or sensation in my body. And it was a really helpful tool for that.
Well, I think that's part of what comes from when you were talking about sitting, 8 hours a day. It doesn't take very long, especially for the first few days in the retreat, for your back to start to be unbearably painful in your lower back, in your hip, in your middle back, in your upper back, in your neck. And, it just pervades everything. And the instruction is to be with it. Keep breathing, just sit with it and not move until the bell rings. And I think working at that physical level and knowing, I can do it. I can let go more. I can let the force of gravity release more and more through my body. I can just be with this thing. And suddenly what feels like excruciating pain turns into some kind of light shower, and it changes. Yeah. And I think that then can be extrapolated from physical pain into all other kinds of situations, emotional pain, difficult circumstances. And I think that's where this kind of Vajrayana sort of soldier mind, comes in, because it's like, I can do this. I can be with anything. Yeah. I can just sit through it.
Yeah, which is, I found to be so helpful in the context of an intimate partnership and relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sitting with my own irritation, my own activation, my own nervous system freak out.
I'd say it's a lot harder doing that in intimate relationships than it is on the cushion. For me, it is.
Yeah.
At least on the cushion, it's just me and my back pain. And if I sit there and I groan and I moan a little bit to myself, or, lie down in the middle of the practice session, the only person I'm really working that out with is, me, myself, and I, me and my non-self. And anyway, I can work it out. It's hard, but it's completely different when the person you love is standing in front of you and saying something like, wow, I can't believe you just said that. And that you did that again. And that's so hurtful. I mean, to me, that's like a higher order of difficulty by many multiples, many multiples, in my experience. It's a lot harder.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, in the kitchen, in real time, being with that in a moment with a partner is very challenging. Yes. Mm-hmm. Where would you say, I want to get into a little bit of story on you and just how you kind of got into spirituality in general, but just while we're here, let's hang out here for a minute. Where would you say, gosh, I have so many questions for you. Let me back up. There's a lot of spiritual teachings and teachers that don't talk about relationships as part of the journey. They might talk about it, but to me, a lot of spiritual teachings might fall short in this category. Is that your experience?
Well, I think it's particularly true with a lot of the Eastern traditions and the traditions that had a strong monastic component and traditions that are meditation oriented, because a lot of that is not built around especially intimate relationships and sexual relationships and all of the dynamics that come with that. So yeah, I think that's true. And just to share, Jason, in my own experience, 18 years ago, I fell in love with someone named Julie Kramer, whom I know you know. And at that time, that's when I was starting to really get involved in studying Buddhist meditation with Reggie. And I was going off on these long retreats and then practicing in solitary retreat, as well as the group retreats we were doing. Yep. And at one point she said to me something like, what's the ultimate goal, Tami, of your practice? And I think, well, part of what I really want is I really want to open my heart more. I want to love more deeply. I want to be more free to love. And she's like, why don't you take some of that time that you're spending on solitary retreat and going on these group retreats and, dancing with your fellow meditation students? Why don't you spend some of that time going on a vacation with me? If what you really want is the depth of love, how about prioritizing our time together in your annual calendar? You work it, that sounds true, hard, and you give a lot, and then you give a lot to your meditation life. What about us? Where's that as your priority, especially if your goal is ultimate connectivity and love? And I realized that was the thing that was really terrifying for me, far more terrifying, far, far, far more terrifying than going on a solitary retreat. And that may not be true for some people, but for me, it was like, oh my God, here I am on a beach vacation with my lover, and she wants to really connect. I'm not being productive in any way. So that's terrifying to begin with. Yeah. I'm not making money, I'm spending money. So, okay, that's terrifying. I'm not even like working towards my enlightenment or some idea like that. I'm just kind of connecting. And we're talking. And so I realized I had to totally turn to that because, part of, I think, what I developed in Vajrayana practice was this taste for the edge, this taste for the growing edge in my life, and being willing to, leaning into the razor's edge instead of going away from it. And I was like, I got to go right towards that. I got to go right into it and see what's really there. And when she pointed this out and I could see this, that's when I started really investing myself in exploring intimate relationships. Mm-hmm. So, your question was, do a lot of teachings not emphasize that? And I'd say, yeah, certainly the meditation traditions don't. But what I saw was that I was getting really imbalanced by not prioritizing it in my own life.
Yeah. Which I think a lot of spiritual practitioners might do, because in a way they might get in a fight with their lover or partner many times, and the place they seek solace is the cushion, for example. It's like, I can at least go meditate with this, and at least my practice is there for me, type of thing, because my partner's not. So in some ways, some people could use it to kind of get away from actually the discomfort of their relationship.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. I mean, I think, the whole notion of spiritual bypassing, which I'm sure your listeners are familiar, but this way that we can use whatever our spiritual path is and spiritual practices to actually avoid developmental tasks that we need to engage with. And I think it was clear to me that there was a developmental task that I needed to engage with that had to do with intimacy and the confrontations that intimacy brings forth, and that's where the real growth was at a certain point.
Yeah, that's right. Are you familiar? I'm sure you're familiar with Wilber's levels and lines. Kind of gets to that.
Yeah.
Point, right.
Yeah.
We can be very developed in one area, but underdeveloped in another. Yeah.
And it's often a lot easier to stay with the areas where we're highly developed. So for me, meditation came very naturally. It's a kind of organic homecoming for me. Even though we talked about some of the challenges of sitting long hours, I also found it very, just easy, natural, intuitive for me. Mm-hmm. Whereas intimate relationships brought up a lot of material that I just felt flooded by inside, that I didn't understand, that it took a lot of support, both therapeutic support and relational support from Julie, from her love and acceptance and willingness to go through a bunch of stuff together to help me gain my confidence. I was not a naturally confident person in the area of intimacy.
Yeah, that's really sweet to hear. Would you say you're more on the, in Stan's language, I know you know Stan, are you more of an island or a wave?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when Stan Tatkin would talk, and, he'd say, "You, island," in the audio series we recorded with him, every time he would address that, I would kind of cringe in the car. And I'm like, I know, it's so rough, you, island. Anyway.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. Would you say, like my own sort of diagnosis, my wife and I talk about this a lot, that a lot of spiritual practitioners, at least in the meditative traditions, like maybe yoga or meditation, tend to be more islandy, which is more the avoidant attachment style. Would you agree with that? I mean, not that you've interviewed all these people, but just as a guess.
Yeah, I'd have to think about that some before. I mean, you're asking me a kind of, it's almost a numerical question. I don't want to say something that I'm not sure of. So that's an interesting observation. I'd have to reflect on that.
Yeah. Yeah. My own observation is that people who meditate tend to have challenges in their relationship. I mean, I saw that in that community for years, and myself. And sometimes people like to be alone. Most of those people like to be alone when they're challenged in an intimate relationship. They don't want to sit and be with someone.
Sure.
Right?
Well, one thing I'd say is we all have challenges in our relationships. I mean, relationships are challenging. I mean, I'm sure that's a core kind of accepted view in relationship school. That's why we need to go to relationship school, because they're challenging, and we don't have the skills that we need. We need to learn these skills. So I think it's challenging for all of us.
Agreed.
I think that if you're in a spiritual tradition that doesn't say you got to develop these skills, these are really important. We're going to practice them. We're going to focus on them. We're going to work on them interpersonally, not just one-on-one, but in small groups. We're going to make this an explicit part of the center of our development as human beings, the center of our heart's unfolding. If that's not being articulated, then people miss it altogether with. So that, I think, is definitely true. It has to be explicitly said, this really matters, and we're going to focus on it.
Yeah, totally. And we're going to do it in a way that's kind of proven and tried, and we've vetted this technique out and it works, and which also can be hard for communities, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
Is your experience, I'm just curious, I guess, what your experience is with all the spiritual teachers that have sort of, as people say, gone down, meaning usually it's a male running some kind of community, starts sleeping with his students, and then eventually the people find out and they're like, oh my God, as if it's a surprise. And I'm just curious, like, what's your take? Because this has happened many times with many teachers over many years. Like, what's going on here on like a relational level and a spiritual level? Like, what's happening?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a question that has a lot of different dimensions to it. But one thing I think is that in working with a spiritual teacher, there's a tendency to project a certain type of perfectionism onto this person. They're perfected. They're perfected. They're a perfected being. They're, a God human, something like that. Instead of, like you and I were having this conversation, we're two people, we're on a path, we're working out our relationship stuff, we're working out our business stuff, we're working out our stuff with microphones and families, and okay, great. I hope your audience isn't idealizing you. And I do everything I can with the folks who tune into Sounds True to not allow any type of idealization by confessing all the time all the ways in which I'm growing as a person, all the challenges that I have, all the ways that I disappoint myself, and all the, it's right there. It's all out there. So when you have a spiritual teacher, though, and traditions that say, that won't inspire your students, so don't share that with them. Instead, sit high on the dais and only show your bright side and keep all the rest of that stuff underground. You're inviting a situation where there's an idealization, a projection onto the teacher of this perfected humanity. And we just have to, and I think the Me Too movement is helping bring this down, and the feminist movement in general. We have to just destroy that and just make us all humans on the path. And back to your thing about levels and lines, it doesn't mean that a teacher may not have a great capacity to, for example, transmit a sense of timeless being. And there are certain people who just know who can do that. Yeah. In a moment, they just go body, mind dropped, bam, and they're in an infinite field. Okay, great, wonderful, check. Fabulous. That does not mean that that person knows how to interact in a sexual relationship with deep love and respect and mutuality. It doesn't mean that. It just means that they can do a drop body mind maneuver. They know how to do it and expand and be an infinite field of radiance in that moment. And I think people get it confused because that being that infinite field of radiance is so compelling. It's so, it's what we all want, is to feel that and to feel that freedom and that timelessness. We want it so much that when we meet someone who's able to transmit that to us, we extrapolate that they're a perfected being, and they're not. They're just someone who has the capacity to transmit the awakened state. Okay.
Yep. So do you believe in enlightenment then?
That's complicated, Jason, and I think it would depend on how you're defining it. And, I think that there are different degrees of enlightenment and different degrees of delusion. There's a teacher I've been, and the reason I'm saying that, I'll explain it, is there's a teacher whose books I've been reading and interviewing quite a lot for Sounds True. He writes under the pen name A.H. Almas, and he started the Diamond approach. And it's an approach that seamlessly brings together both psychology and spirituality. And with Sounds True, he created a series called Endless Enlightenment. And part of what he was pointing out is that there is one type of enlightenment, and then it's done. There are different realizations on the path, and it's endless, meaning there are always more realizations that can be had. And delusion is endless, just like enlightenment is endless. Otherwise, enlightenment couldn't be endless if there weren't more delusions to to be seen through. And so I think when I think of it that way, it kind of makes more sense to me. And it makes more sense to me in terms of my experience with teachers. It's like, oh, they're really enlightened in this part of their life or in that way, or they have all these, but there's still some delusion over here or there. And, certainly, that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, totally. Tami, what's over the many years you've been involved in meeting all of these spiritual teachers and all these working with different traditions and practices and authors, what's different right now about the spiritual movement, would you say? What's like one or two things that are really different or changing than 20 years ago?
Yeah. Well, I think people are owning their own authority in a new way. And I think that's really important and really critical. People are getting that it has to resonate or it's not going to work for me. And they're not giving their power away as much as I think previously people did, whether it was to traditions or paths or, a sense of like, if I don't, the whole idea, if you don't dig deep in one place, you're never going to find the water you seek. I think that people kind of believed that more 20, 30 years ago. And now they're like, that person's been digging in one place for a long time. And in certain ways, they don't seem that transformed. I think I go someplace else and get the kind of transformation that I need. So you could say, you mentioned the integral path and this idea of levels and lines, meaning that each one of us has a personal psychograph. So I could be very developed in one way and not in another. And I think people get that.
Yeah.
And they're saying, I'm going to go get the transformation I need in the different ways. This path is not helping me with my physical health. So I'm going to go get that. I'm going to study with a functional medicine person because I'm not, so I think that for sure. I also think that there is more of a, how can I put it? I talked about how the Vajrayana had this kind of soldier component, like we're going to get there, we're going to meditate our way to enlightenment. And I think there's also a sense that we're going to enjoy every bit of our life right now. At least I feel that it's not about some future goal as much as it really is the path is the goal. And I think I feel that from people. Let's not put our spiritual life out into the future. It has to be realized right now in wherever we find ourselves in this conversation, listening now. It's not some future thing. It's right here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I remember so many of Trungpa's teachings around that as well, right? The path is the goal, meditation and action.
Yeah.
Yeah, extremely helpful. Hey, what's up? Quick interruption from the Relationship School here about our 9-month training. As you know, we sold out this year, but the good news is you can apply right now for our next round. So listen to Matt, who had some things to say after his 9-month training.
Right now, I'm feeling very alive, and I'm feeling very connected to myself and to the people I've been on the journey with. And I'm feeling a lot more confident and a lot more capable and a lot more optimistic about myself, about my abilities in relationship, about my ability to be a better partner, to be a better father.
All right, there you have it from Matt, who is now a level 1 relationship coach. Hire him. Go check him out on our website. He lives in Toronto, Canada. And if you want to apply right now to get in our next class, we're already filling seats. relationshipschool.com/DPIR. All right, we'll see you in there, and back to Tami Simon. Would you say that there's any more attention on relational development in spiritual life or books or authors or people, teachers? Would you say that's going on?
Yeah. I see it happening a lot in the business space, which is interesting, which is a little different than what you're talking about. I think it's also happening within spiritual communities. I mean, spiritual communities are realizing that if they don't address relational dynamics, people will leave. I mean, it's pretty simple. People are not going to stay.
Right.
If it's not a place where relationship dynamics are honored and in a healthy way. But in the business space, mindfulness has now become introduced for business people because they want to be able to be calm and resourced. But it's also very clear that the most successful organizations will be organizations where there's a lot of trust within teams. And that in order to have trust within teams, you have to have authentic connection and authentic communication. And you have to be able to listen to each other. And you have to be able to speak the truth, and you have to be able to talk about what you need. And one of the things that I'm seeing is that often when I talk to other business people, I say that the same skills that I've developed in my intimate relationship in order to have a really loving, close, dynamic, trusting partnership are the exact same skills that are needed in business to be successful. And that really the way I want to work with my fellow Sounds Truers, and there's 120 of us now at Sounds True, and the way that I like to interact with people is the same way I would interact, really the same principles. I mean, sure, it's not the same as a sexual relationship and everything like that, so I'm not trying to say it's completely analogous, but the principles and the skills, maybe that's the best way to put it, the skills are the same. Which was when someone comes and says, there's something I need to talk to you about. It's like, okay, time to start practicing my skills right now. This is the moment. I have some feedback for you, and that's what it takes to have an exceptional team in organizations. And I think companies get this because if you have exceptional teamwork, you have less drag in your system. You don't waste time and energy in the same kind of way, and you're able to be more effective and more successful in your business.
Yeah, totally. So I'm really hearing that you've observed that relational development is also hitting the workplace more than ever, and that to be successful, people need to get their kind of shit together there and learn how to communicate, learn how to listen. Like I know people, when they don't feel emotionally safe at their place of employment, like they can't safely express who they are. That's a problem, right? That creates kind of a culture of contraction. And then it's like... Yeah,
and I think the whole movement of bringing coaches into companies to help, like a coach is coming in to say, these two people are having trouble finding what is the coach teaching people? They're teaching them basic relationship skills.
Yeah.
Have you found out what's going on with this other person and what they need? Oh, no, never thought to do that. Have you articulated your needs? No, never, does this person know how the stress you're under? No, haven't said that either. Are you willing to be vulnerable and share that? And,
Yeah, and it can be really hard for the entrepreneur who's moving quickly maybe to slow down and deal, right, with the dynamics.
It can be, but if you don't, it will bite you in the ass.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, it completely will. And so you think it's going to slow you down to do it, but you'll get really get slowed down. You'll get taken down if you don't do it, because people don't like to work for a leader that doesn't have the time to connect and listen and see what's really being said in the room. You have to slow down for that, or it'll cost you a lot more.
Yeah, totally. It's almost like I'm hearing, we talk about, in my marriage, we talk about having a secure home base a lot. And as Dan Siegel says, it's a safe harbor and it's a launching pad, right? And so we could apply the same principle here in a place of employment, right? A culture, a team, and say that we want this to be a place where people feel secure, right? And the difference, though, is that in some instances, because it's a hierarchy, it's not a holacracy, it might not be mutual, right? So the boss, let's say you, are not practicing mutuality in the same way you would with Julie. But you are maybe trying to bring in secure principles.
So first of all, it's not a 50-50 relationship. There is a hierarchy, so that's true. And it's great to try to create quote unquote secure functioning, but it's an inherently insecure situation. For example, when a company needs to go through a reorganization of some kind, people can lose their jobs.
Yeah.
So you can say, well, we want to have a secure functioning here at work, but how do you do that and run a business that has to go through a reorganization? And my response to that is you can still be a truth teller. Like people, there's a lot of security in knowing I'm going to be told the truth.
Yeah.
I'm going to be treated fairly and considerately with a lot of mutuality. So this is going to be a discussion. We're going to try to figure this out together. We're going to create a transition that works well, not just for the company, but also for the employee. So there can still be a lot of truth, even if there's not the same kind of quote unquote security. And just for the record, the employer, me, I don't have security either. People quit all the time.
Yeah.
I decided to go back to school. I decided to go, work for a startup and get equity and, whatever, some other company. So there's an inherent insecurity both ways.
That's great.
But even in the midst of it, there can be this sense of, we're going to work this out together. We're going to have a lot of heart. We're going to speak the truth. We're going to figure it out the best we can. We're going to have a lot of transparency and, dare I say, a lot of love. And that can happen.
Have you taught a class on this or any lectured on this? Because this seems like a good thing for you. Like you seem like you're really on point here to me.
Well, I mean, I'm experiencing it in my work, and I'm, it's important to me because I value heart-based leadership and community.
Yeah.
And I know that there are times it sounds true when people want a kind of security that they imagine in their minds, that's maybe like the kind of security a child would feel in a family. And I'm like, well, guess what? That's not what we are. As much as, it's nice to think that like a loving business is like a family. It's not actually a family. It's a group of people who are freely choosing to work together, who may freely choose not to work together. But within that, what can we give each other? What kind of assurances can we give each other? And, to me, the truth is one of the most powerful things. And I mean, I don't know if I can communicate this clearly, but if I know someone's going to just say to me, let me tell you what's going on for me. I'm thinking about this. I'm not sure about that. I might want to go back to school. I'm not sure. I'd love your input on it. And there's this sense of like, oh, we're navigating together. I don't have to guess and all that. That's so powerful. I mean, that's what creates trust. And so I might, instead of saying like secure functioning in a workplace, I might use something like trustful functioning or something.
Nice.
And trustful functioning is, I don't know if trustful is even a word, but trust-filled. But to me, that's, it sounds true, is called sounds true for a reason. But trust-filled is really powerful. It's such a powerful thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So awesome. I love this conversation. And I want to bring it back to teacher-student dynamics for a minute, just because that's where my mind's going. When, let's just say, you kind of alluded to if the staff person is feeling sort of young and wanting the company to provide them everything. Now that also happens in a teacher-student dynamic, right? And you're like, well, I do my best to kind of level the playing fields on my side because you're in a position of authority, right? I'm just airing myself and just telling the truth about my shit, basically. And I do my best to do the same. And still the projections come. So I get that both parties have a responsibility here. Jason, as the teacher, I can keep just being like, guys, I'm kind of a mess. Yep, my wife and I got in a fight again. It took us a long time to work through it or whatever. So they go, oh, he's a real person. Like he doesn't ever fight with his wife or whatever.
Right.
So there's what I can do, and then there's what the student can do. So if you were to give the students or the listeners, let's say they're following a teacher like me or you, or they're in a company and they find themselves sort of projecting onto this person, what could we tell the student or the practitioner? Like what advice do you have for them that's their part to work that out?
Sure. Well, I think one thing is for all of us, wherever we are in that question, to commit to our own adulthood. And it's not a simple thing to commit to our own adulthood. I'm 57 now, And it's so interesting. I see the parts of myself that are still like a child when they come up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wow, Tami, you're almost 60. Really? Like, really? You're going to pout about this? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to pout. Yep. I'm going to give myself at least 10 minutes of really solid pouting. So, okay, but for each one of us to just recognize, oh, that's a child part of me that's working here, this child that wants this or that, and to be able to self-confront around that. The other thing, and I think it's one of the most important things, is to recognize we are each making choices every step of the way. And you are free. I am free. So for the person who's studying with the teacher, you're free to quit right now. You're free to walk out the door, or you're free to stay. You're making a choice. No, and to someone who's working in a company, you're free to quit right now and go get a different job. You're free to go create your own company. You're free.
Yeah.
You have made this choice, and you can make a different choice anytime you want. And all of our choices have consequences. What choice do you want to make? And own your choice. Take accountability for your choice. So if you want to make a different choice, if you're like, I want to I have no idea what the people in your world may be complaining about XYZ. Where is the place of power in the conversation? So this is a totally simple and weird example, but I was complaining about something that had to do with a home decorating project that we're doing and how I didn't like it. And Julie just looked at me and she said, why don't you make a suggestion of something you would like? And I was like, oh, that's a novel idea.
Something you probably tell your team all the time.
Yeah. And it was like, yeah, it's a really, really simple. She's like, why don't you just go ahead and create 3 examples of something you would like instead of just tearing down these things that you don't like. It's a really simple idea. Really, really simple. But there are all these different situations where we're just so busy kind of blaming or tearing down or whatever. So we're not finding that place of power and agency in the situation. And I think there's always a place like that. There's always a place of power where you say, oh, okay, I have these 4 choices. This is what I choose, and I live with the consequences of it.
Yeah. Commit to your adulthood, folks. I love that.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
It's a big deal, right? Yeah. I mean, okay, a couple more questions and then we'll start winding down. Personal growth inherently can have some pitfalls, like anything. And how do you teach and tell people and the people you've studied with about this paradox of like accepting myself as I am and striving to be a better person? What is just sort of your download about that?
Yeah.
Like not trying to fix myself because I'm broken, or not trying to I'm always working on myself as a project and I'm not, accepting me. And how do you teach about that or talk about that?
Sure. Well, it's interesting because I just did a recording recently with Kristen Neff, who has written and teaches a lot on self-compassion. And one of the things she's now teaching on is the yin and the yang of self-compassion. And she talks about how the yin part is this kind of unconditional loving presence that we can have for ourselves, kind of like the all loving mama bear, just you're okay, Tami, you're learning and growing and this is new for you and everybody makes mistakes. But then the yang side of it is, I want to provide for myself in a certain kind of way. And I want to be motivated. I am motivated for this. That's part of my own self-compassion towards myself. And I think in any given situation, because she talks about balancing these two, and what I like about it is in any given situation, there can be this quality of kind of sweet honey-like acceptance combined with this kind of more fierce sort of quality of, and this is what's next. This is what's next for me. Yeah. In my own life, the simple way to look at it, I think, is just really simple. Is it's great to be a learner. Like, it's just great to be a learner. I'm a learner. And, you're asking me now all these things of what I have learned, and I've learned a lot of things, and I'm learning a lot of things. Yeah. And that's great. So, it's never like you're done. Totally. And I think if you can be in this view of just being a learner, then it's like, it's okay that you're still learning. I hope everyone still is learning. I mean, that's what makes us vibrant as we get old, instead of like crusty and crotchety and, curmudgeonly. Instead, we have this youthful kind of, wow, like things are new. Like, that's new. I never got that before. Yeah. Like, I was unconscious about that. Now I'm more conscious about that. That's so cool. We're learning. The light bulbs are always kind of off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Yes, good reminder. And what would you say because you've interviewed so many people, and our society is really in a pretty interesting spot. There's a lot of intensity out there and a lot of beauty, a lot going on. What is sort of the front wave that you're noticing that people are talking about and teaching about that feels exciting or interesting to you right now?
Oh my. Well, I think we're in this both contraction and expansion zone. The contraction around the racism and division that we see, and the expansion is into a true multicultural, multigendered, multi-formed, global, interconnected world. And that multicultural, multi-formed, multi-gendered world, it's coming into being. It really is. And we have to support it in every way we can, and see whatever ways we may be not part of that solution, and further commit to it, and further make space for voices and perspectives that haven't had space. And so I think that's really, really important for all of us to do that. So that's one point I would make. We can't revert to any type of division, tribalism, nationalism. We have to help give birth to this new interconnected global society.
Yeah. And there's like resistance in that expansion. There's like a lot of fear, right? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels true. Yeah. Okay. What are you currently working on, Tami, and what's alive for you creatively?
Yeah, I have two big projects that I'm working on in the outer world, and then a few kind of places of inner focus. Maybe I'll start with the inner focus. Okay. On the inner focus, I'm really opening my heart more. And that can sound kind of trite, like you're opening your heart more, but I am. And what I feel, it's so palpable, is that there's kind of like this. It's like a slit that has opened in my heart, and underneath it is all of this it's like this sensitive tissue that I never had access to before. And it's so unbelievably sensitive. I don't know what other word to use. It could be hurt so easily. And yet it also is so intelligent. And it's really terrifying to like open it up more and more with other people in all kinds of situations. And yet I also know that it's a key to the entire my entire being opening up more. I mean, Adyashanti talks about something he calls the spiritual heart, and how the spiritual heart is actually a perceptual center. And it's our perceptual center of the unity of all of existence, where it's not just a thought, like before when I was talking about our multicultural, multiformed, multigendered word. That was kind of a thought that I projected. But here, the spiritual heart, it kind of knows it, and it feels it, and it can sense it in all of its interactions with a tree or a table or a child or, a feather, anything. And so but it also requires the capacity to be able to be with, we talked about this in our conversation, really intense and difficult emotions and pain. Like when you open it more, there's greater sensitivity to all the pain also. So that I'd say is my focus, is this kind of opening the spiritual heart. And then in the outer world, Sounds True is launching a new program. We're working with Wisdom 2.0 and LinkedIn Learning on this, which is called the Inner MBA.
Ooh,
and
that's cool.
and that's when you and I were talking, Jason, about it's a 9-month immersion program that begins in May of 2020 through September. That begins in September, of 2020 and runs through May of 2021. We'll be advertising it at the beginning of next year. But it's this 9-month immersion program to teach people the inner skills, which are relational skills.
For sure.
The skills of mindfulness, the skills of self-compassion, et cetera, to be successful in a multiple bottom line way, true success, to really know what your values are when you're creating your business so that you don't end up potentially being successful in one way and selling your soul out in the process. Yeah. So that's something that I want to give a lot of my life force to helping create in the world.
That's so cool. Yeah. Beautiful. I love both of those. Thanks for sharing that. Two more questions here. If I ask every guest, part of our mission of the relationship school is to reach young people and primarily high school, college age kids, and eventually younger. But one of the questions I ask all my guests is, if I had a room full of 1,000 teens and I could only teach them one thing about relationship, and you were there whispering in my ear and you told me that one thing, what would you tell me to tell them?
If you make it your number one priority, I don't think you'll ever regret it.
Nice. That's beautiful. Thanks. And Tami, where can people find you? And you have a podcast and obviously a big publishing house. We publish a lot of amazing books. So give us a little sense of that world.
Sure. Well, it's all easy to find at SoundsTrue.com. And at SoundsTrue.com, there's over 500 free podcasts. The podcast is called Insights at the Edge, where I've interviewed spiritual teachers. But there's lots of other free content of all kinds. And then our collection of over 3,000 different titles that are books, online courses, audio programs, lots of different learning programs in different formats.
Cool. Great. So we'll put that in the show notes. Make sure you check that out. Obviously, Sounds True. I've bought tons of Sound True stuff over the years, and Tami's an awesome resource. Thanks, Tami, for being here. Great to see you.
Great to see you. You almost called me Sammy, which is one of my nicknames. So sometimes people call me Sammy Timon. So good job, Jason. Thank you.
You got it.
Lots of love. Lots of love.
Cool.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Okay, yeah. How about that one? Tami Simon, folks. Truth-telling. Okay, that's your action step. Besides going and buying something from SoundsTrue.com, checking out Tami and all the amazing authors that she promotes, tell the truth. Okay, there's 2 action steps today. Tell the truth. Right, that creates kind of a nice environment at work or at home. People trust that you're going to bring the truth. So find that thing that you're not telling the truth about, withholding, and see if you can go there. Tell the truth, right? And how about this one? Second part of your action step, commit to being an adult. Commit to adulthood. Adults are free, as she said. No one's in bondage here. Be an adult. Learn the skills to become more of an adult in whatever area you feel kind of like a kid in. Could be finances, relationship, fitness, doesn't matter. Obviously, if you're listening to this, maybe it's relationship, so commit to adulthood. And how are you going to do that? How are you going to become an adult relationally? Come to the relationship school. Come check us out. All right, so tell the truth and commit to adulthood. Yes. Yes. Man, we talked about so much there, right? CEOs, relational development in companies, spiritual bypassing, man, there's just a lot of nuggets in here. So thanks again, Tami, for all your wisdom and being a student of life. Yeah. Okay, everybody. As you know, Deeper is full, our course. If you want to become a relationship coach, if you want to come into our orbit, Deeper is the place to start. You're going to get the class you never got on intimate relationships, and it's going to rock your world. It's going to upgrade you big time. You're going to, your self-worth is going to increase, and you're going to feel like a more competent adult in your life. So now we're looking at January, since this course is sold out. So hopefully we'll see you in January, and stay tuned for all the registration details when that signs up, or when that sign up is up. You can certainly apply now if you want, just if you're just a yes. Okay. As always, subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcasts on your phone. I believe we're on Google Play. We're definitely on Spotify. So find us in one of those places, subscribe, share it with a friend. Thanks so much, and we'll talk soon. Hey, thanks so much for listening. Relationship School fans and Smart Couple listeners, please subscribe to this YouTube channel, all right? Do us a favor, subscribe, share one of these videos with a friend, all right? We want to help the planet get their act together around relationships, and you are one of them, so thank you.